A mosquito transmitter of the Zika virus is found in Washington, D.C. The Power Africa Summit showcases solutions for the continent's electric power shortages. And if you dream of a Cinderella wedding, you might want to check out this unusual church in Taiwan. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control is reporting what appears to be the first case of the Zika virus being transmitted in the United States by sexual contact. Officials in the state of Texas say the patient was infected with Zika after having sexual contact with a sick person who returned from Venezuela. Dr. Tom Frieden, head of the CDC, confirmed via Twitter that the reported case was transmitted to the infected person's sexual partner who had not left the United States. Alberto Pimienta has more on the virus.
Andrew Lima is a mosquito biologist. In 2011, a friend asked for help to combat the mosquitoes constantly biting him at his apartment in Washington's Capitol Hill neighborhood. What Lima found shocked him.
Upon going in his place and seeing the first mosquito that I saw, I swatted it and took a look and found that it was an Aedes aegypti mosquito. That's the yellow fever mosquito, which is responsible for transmitting dengue virus, chikungunya virus, Zika virus.
It was not an isolated event. For 5 years now, Lima has been visiting the neighborhood and keeps finding more Aedes aegypti.
There was no new genes coming in, meaning that this was a population that had existed here and was continuing to exist here somehow throughout the winter months.
Lima says the mosquitoes found a way to survive the cold winter weather. Most likely, he says, finding shelter under bridges, in trees, or underground structures, and laying eggs in nearby puddles. But even though Aedes aegypti is in the nation's capital, Lima says the level of concern should not be high.
A lot of that has to do with differences in the fact that we have much less open air living here. People have air conditioning, intact screens and windows, whereas in the tropics, there's much more of an outdoor component to the way that people live and work.
While the mosquito may not pose a great risk, Lima thinks it's here to stay. He says that along with its ability to find shelter, warming global temperatures may be a factor in finding Aedes aegypti this far north. Alberto Pimienta for VOA News, Washington.
Well, there was aura in the skies over Somalia late Tuesday when passengers on a Diallo Airlines jet just 5 minutes after taking off from Mogadishu heard a loud explosion before a gaping hole appeared in the fuselage near the right wing. Authorities say the charred body of one man was recovered on the ground north of Mogadishu after he was believed to have been sucked out of the plane. The jet was able to safely return to Mogadishu to make an emergency landing. The plane, operated by Hamish Airlines, was bound for Djibouti with 74 passengers on board before the incident occurred. According to Reuters, U.S. government sources believe a bomb likely caused that explosion. Now, tensions remain high in Burundi following a grenade attack on a bar that killed one person Monday night. Residents now fear there will be more violence since the African Union backed away from sending in peacekeepers into the country without the government's consent. A police spokesman confirmed 2 grenades were detonated and 8 people were wounded. When the peacekeeping plan was announced in December by the African Union's Peace and Security Council, officials had said they could invoke an article of the AU's charter that allows it to act even without a government's agreement. But African leaders showed wariness of such a move at the summit and instead decided to seek approval first. Well, for the latest on the situation in Burundi, Moses Havyarimana, a Bujumbura-based journalist, joins me on the phone from the capital. Moses, first, give us a sense of how things are. Are these attacks or this kind of violent incidents increasing or decreasing in the last few weeks?
Yes, what we have witnessed now, there have been a decrease in the attacks in the Bujumbura capital for the past few weeks. However, targeted assassinations have continued, and as recently 3 people were killed in the Bujumbura capital. However, today now we have seen latest 3 explosions in the business center in Bujumbura, which has left at least 8 people injured, according to the police spokesman here in the Burundi capital.
Now, you know, there was hope, really high hopes, that the AU would send forces to Bujumbura, but now that looks like it's not happening. What have people been saying, the general population?
Well, according to the people living in Bujumbura, they expected the deployment. However, there have been a division with them because some were saying the deployment was necessary, and others were saying it's not really necessary because the current situation in Bujumbura has relatively been calm for the past few weeks. However, some critics to the government were pushing on and saying that actually the deployment, most especially the residents who are living in the protested areas, the suburbs of Bujumbura, which carried out protests against President Pierre Nkurunziza, have seen tense nights, and so they felt like actually the deployment was really necessary. However, other residents in the other capital areas, they felt like it wasn't that really necessary. So there's a kind of division within the citizens on whether to deploy the peacekeeping mission or not.
Now, what is being said about the peace talks between the government and the opposition?
Well, actually, the peace talks, the National Dialogue Commission has launched last week, the National Dialogue in the countryside, which how it has been conducted in 3 provinces so far. However, the chairman of the National Dialogue Commission said that he cannot go outside the country in order to approach the stakeholders, the opposition and the civil society organizations who fled the country, in order to bring them on board and to have the peaceful, inclusive dialogue. However, he said that he commended the President Museveni, the president of Uganda, who was actually appointed by the African Union and the East African community to mediate the dialogue, that he could be the right man to approach the stakeholders in order to carry out the inclusive dialogue. But this is we come to know in mind that now President Museveni is now busy with the campaigns back in Uganda. So
Moses, thank you. Thank you. That's all we'll have for now. Moses Avierimana, he's a Bujumbura-based journalist. Now, going a little further south, South African President Jacob Zuma has offered to pay part of the bill for state-funded improvements to his rural home. Mr. Zuma, who previously said he did not owe the state a refund, says he will allow the country's Auditor General and Finance Minister to decide how much of the $15 million refurbishment he should pay back. The 2013 security upgrade, which included a cattle enclosure and amphitheater, has been heavily criticized by the opposition and news media. In a statement on Tuesday, Zuma's office says he proposed the solution in order to achieve an end to the drawn-out dispute. The Constitutional Court is soon to rule on whether the president should reimburse the state for that amount. Now, since May, more than 40 suspected jihadists have been caught entering Europe while posing as Syrian war refugees. That's according to a firm with expertise on international terrorism. The U.S.-based Terrorism Research and Analysis Consortium reported this week that 41 Islamic State-linked militants and 2 from rival Jabhat al-Nusra, al-Qaeda's affiliate in Syria, were apprehended while posing as refugees. Some of them used false passports, Track said in a security update for commercial clients that it shared with VOA. 19 of the 43 jihadists were caught in Turkey, but the rest made it into the European Union before being identified. The International Rescue Committee says some 36,000 people entered Europe just in the first 3 weeks of January. While the interception of jihadist infiltrators feeds into public fears in Europe about more terror attacks, increasing pressure on politicians to curb the entry of asylum seekers, which in turn helps terror groups radicalize disaffected European Muslims. Well, last April, VOA followed the progress of 6 young Syrian refugees, 4 brothers and 2 friends as they made their way from Libya in North Africa to Italy by boat and eventually to Germany. Henry Ridgwell caught up with the refugees again in Berlin as they struggle to forge new lives amid the turmoil of Europe's refugee crisis.
It's been nearly a year since the Abu Al-Nar brothers and their friends set off from Libya on an overloaded fishing boat. They survived thanks to the Italian Coast Guard. VOA first met the young refugees at Italy's Milan station, cold, fearful, unsure of what lay ahead on their journey to Berlin. 9 months later, they have been given asylum by Germany, and most are still living in refugee camps. Baha, one of the friends, lives at a camp on the industrial outskirts of Berlin that once housed East Germans fleeing communist rule.
The first days of mine, when I got Berlin, I had a strategy to build my life here. I was thinking of working as a teacher or continue studying at college or to do Ausbildung. So, yeah. Now I am a little bit lost. I don't know what I have to do.
Baha desperately wants to leave the camp and find a place of his own, but he says landlords in Berlin refuse to rent apartments to refugees.
I have nothing else I can do. I go to the school, then come back to Vonheim, or go to trying to find a flat, or to find a mini job. But unfortunately, till now, I didn't find anything. Yeah.
Baha and his friends are safe and they have a roof over their heads. But their dreams of starting a new life are on hold as Germany tries to cope with the sheer number of migrants.
They are fleeing an increasingly brutal civil war. Baha finds it difficult to watch what's happening back home.
I lost my father and brother. I also lost my uncle and 2 other relatives because of the war. It's really difficult to communicate with my family because the situation there, and sometimes I'm afraid also to get another bad news about them, like I had about my family, my father and brother.
Baha's friendship with Ghiath was forged in the deserts of Libya and on the open seas of the Mediterranean. Now they're off to meet the youngest of the group of friends who made that treacherous crossing, Ghiath's youngest brother, Hussein. With the support of his father, a long-time resident in Berlin, and his brothers, Ghiath has been more fortunate.
I have a new work with my father, Arabic restaurant, Kana, and I'm study Dutch language, and I hope I make that as good. And I have a new room in hostel.
Ghiath even met German Chancellor Angela Merkel at a refugee welcoming event in Berlin.
She, for me, Mama Teresa. Yeah. Why? Because she opened door for me come because another country closed.
For Ghiath, one thing is missing. His mother, who is stuck in Turkey, unable to get a German visa and too frail to follow in her son's footsteps. The young men are safe, but their search for a new future is far from finished. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, Berlin.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook, and the address is Africa54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vincent Makori. Well, coming up, finding solutions for the continent's power shortages. Stay with us.
This is BizBeat.
Being deaf has not stopped Mara Landinas from opening up her own business. In sign language, she says,
many of my friends love my clothes, they love my shoes, and it really hit me that maybe I should become a fashion designer instead. So that's when I decided.
At her New York store, Mara uses sign language to communicate with customers, but so does Russ Stein, a restaurant owner. Using sign language, he says, it's not as complicated as one might think.
Just imagine yourself in another country, for example. How do you communicate? You know, you use gestures, you point,
There's about 1 million deaf people in the U.S., 70 million worldwide. Tom Baldridge of Gallaudet University says technology is playing a big role for the disabled.
Social media and email have made face-to-face oral communication less necessary in interacting with deaf people.
For Russ and Mara, they believe more of the hearing community are opening their ears to the deaf. For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
Welcome back. It's time for our Wednesday Business Report, and we are now joined from New York by Jill Malandrino. Now, Jill, crude oil dipped below $40 again this week, further stressing the budgets of African oil-dependent countries, right?
That's right, Vincent. The crude complex continues to show no bottom in prices as the supply glut intensifies in light of waning demand and a stalemate in production cuts. So not only have weak oil fundamentals caused a rout in the equity markets, but multi-year low prices have hit oil-dependent economies as government budgets were largely financed by oil revenue. In fact, Nigeria and Angola are in talks with the World Bank to help secure funding support.
Now, is it more than just crude oil prices that are impacting public finances? Or rather,
yes,
impacted by public finances?
Right. A major part of the budget crisis is weakening currency. So let's isolate Nigeria, for example. Both the World Bank and other financial institutions, like the International Monetary Fund, have recommended that Nigeria devalue the naira, but President Buhari is staunchly opposed to devaluing the currency. So for countries like Nigeria, which import a lot of their food and refined fuel, this has created serious challenges as importers buy in dollars and sell in naira, meaning they get less for their money, or they have to charge consumers more. Currently, the naira trades at roughly 197 against the U.S. dollar. But on February 4th, the Nigerian Central Bank will hold a meeting with foreign exchange officers from commercial lenders in Lagos, and we will certainly report back on the developments made there.
Now, has Nigeria officially applied for aid?
No, right now the government will continue consultations with international partners like the meeting happening on the 4th. Nobody's using the term bailout, and while Nigeria is in a serious situation, analysts are not calling it a crisis yet. This is a major concern for the country because oil revenues are still used to support basic government activities, not investment. So right-sizing public finances is a key priority for President Buhari, and it's something he clearly outlined in his when he planned to increase the spending budget by 20% in 2016, and that was according to his maiden budget delivered in December.
Well, Jill, thank you very much. And that is Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino reporting live from New York. Now, decision makers from Africa's power sector, investors and power developers worldwide gathered in Washington this week for the second annual Power Africa Summit. The summit aims to alleviate the shortages of electricity that plague many African countries. VOA's Mariama Diallo has our report.
We're looking at
the in-stream auger turbine is among the technological innovations exhibited at the summit. It uses flowing water to generate power, says Chunpong Ang of Zwedi Global.
So this unit, unlike other hydro energy projects, do not take years to perform. It is what we call baseload energy, unlike wind and solar that only delivers energy when Mother Nature cooperates. These units deliver energy 24/7, non-stop, as long as the river flows.
His company just signed a 100 megawatts purchasing power agreement with Ghana's electricity company and hopes to deliver the turbine by mid-summer. Veronica Bolton-Smith from EnergyNet, the organizer of the summit, cites Corp ownership, dubbed the floating power plant, as another example of innovation.
They're able to pull power that's generated from their ship onto the mainland, and they've just done a project in Ghana.
She points out that some of the smaller projects are just as important as the bigger players.
We've got something called Shake Your Power, which is run by a lady called Sudha, and it's a little device. It's kind of like a musical instrument. You shake it and it emits a light. That's going to be really relevant to someone living in a provincial place who has no reading light or can't see their cooking utensils.
President Barack Obama unveiled the new Power Africa initiative in 2013.
We're going to start by investing $7 billion in U.S. government resources,
Fast forward to this week, in which Power Africa coordinator Andrew Hertzkowitz unveiled a free app called PATT that can track hundreds of energy projects in the continent.
What we've done with this roadmap is we've shown specifically how we're going to add 30,000 megawatts, how we're going to add 60 million connections.
Babacar Diagne, Senegal's ambassador to the United States, praised President Obama's initiative. Senegal has been able to boost its electricity production through the Overseas Private Investment Corporation.
91 million euros for the Contour Global Project, which will allow the Cap des Biches projects power plant, our biggest power plant, to reopen in next May 2016.
CEO of Integrated Solar Technologies, Gabino Gerengomba, says more such partnerships are needed.
Electricity shortage in Africa is 90 million megawatt. So it cannot take only one company, it cannot take one government.
This summit goes a long way toward forging those partnerships and closing the electricity gap. Mariama Diallo, VOA News, Washington.
Well, all the commercials, rallies, handshakes, and time spent by candidates meeting with voters throughout Iowa's 99 counties came to a crescendo as voters decided the first contest in the U.S. presidential race. As viewers Ken Faraba reports, turnout is translating into momentum as the candidates and voters look ahead to the next contest.
For the Williams family of West Des Moines, caucus night was a fork in the road.
I'm genuinely interested to see which way both sides go.
She and her husband went to opposite sides of the caucus site at Valley Church, which hosted both Democrats and Republicans.
It's been convenient since we had to bring the little one, so yeah.
The hardest decision in the family wasn't who to vote for.
Hi.
It was who the children would spend caucus night with. Dad won that vote, and the boys took their seats as he waited to cast his ballot for Florida Senator Marco Rubio, a Republican.
Hillary screwed.
While Mom supported former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, a Democrat, just down the hall.
264.
It was the Williams family's first time participating in a caucus, something Donald Trump Jr. has heard a lot in Iowa.
I'm seeing so many people that are just, hey, first-time caucusers, or, I haven't caucused in 20, 10, 30 years, whatever it may be, and we're going out and doing it for your father.
Organizers of this Republican caucus site in West Des Moines initially anticipated about 350 voters would turn out. But when it was all said and done, 460 ballots were cast.
For Williams, voting in the caucus was a last-minute decision, but his vote helped Rubio win at this location.
It makes me feel a lot better that I came out.
Rubio 201.
I think the odds were against him, so to see this is hopefully a good sign of the next few months to come.
Today there was so much talk about Trump and Cruz, but in the background was the momentum for Marco, and so I think they sort of downplayed that a little, which I think was a good thing.
It's a battle of attrition, and you just got to keep going, and you're never going to have that problem with my father. I mean, the level of energy that he has, the amount of enthusiasm he has for this is just incredible, so no one's going to outwork him.
Even though Donald Trump's lead in the polls did not translate to victory, his son is looking down the road to New Hampshire and South Carolina, and eventually the nomination.
Huckabee, 5.
And as other candidates drop out following disappointing early finishes, the Williams family hopes they can cast another vote for Clinton and Rubio in November's general election. Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Des Moines, Iowa.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, an unusual church in Taiwan is now a tourist attraction. We'll be right back.
Of several videos of the event that ran counter to the violent acts of many other movements. Mr. President, our case to Côte d'Ivoire to
performance of the King of Tanzania, Mr. Vikos Ekonte.
They try to force us to live in the fear.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Could this be the dream wedding venue of the future? A Taiwanese county has built an enormous glass shoe as a tribute to local women who suffered from a debilitating foot disease. Completed last month, the transparent 55-foot tall church in the southwest of the island has already attracted large numbers of visitors even before it officially opens in 2 weeks. The shoe is intended for use as a wedding hall and a tourist attraction. So if you always dreamed of getting married in a glass slipper, now is your chance to have a Cinderella wedding. Well, and finally, staff at a Japanese zoo staged an emergency drill simulating the recapture of an escaped zebra. A zookeeper in a zebra costume tore down netted fences, pushing over a zookeeper before it was enclosed by nets and sedated. A total of 150 zoo staff members, police and the fire department participated in the biannual simulation at the Zoological Gardens in Tokyo. The zoo has seen escaped animals in the past, including a panther, elephants, and more recently monkeys. And that is what is trending today. Well, that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to Voice of America's News Words, where we teach you about words in the news.
When the George W. Bush Presidential Library opened in Texas, all of the living U.S. presidents, past and present, gathered for the ceremony.
One of the things that the Presidential Library's opening demonstrates, in many ways, is an end to the administration. This is really the last thing that he's going to do as president of this administration, of this group of people.
The word presidential means having to do with a president. Presidential libraries hold the official papers from a president's administration.
Presidential elections are when voters choose a president, often a nation's top public official. Now, when you hear the word presidential,
your English will be good enough to know what this news word means.